What's up everybody, I'm Ace and this is Boss Bottled Intense Eau de Parfum. We just recently here on the channel hit 130 subscribers. Thank you guys so much. And if at any point you get value from this video and you haven't yet subscribed, consider it. There will be a ton of more videos like this on all these fragrances behind me and a whole bunch more. So let's go ahead and get into the review. So the Boss Bottled line has been around since 1998. This is one of the iterations upon that, and in my opinion this is really about the only one in the line you should still be looking at, just because this really does the same thing as the previous fragrances, but it's stronger and in my opinion better, just a little bit more going on. This is a warm but fresh fragrance, and it is a fruity, spicy fragrance. This is high quality smelling, but it's actually a very affordable fragrance. You can actually get this for under $40, which are all contributing reasons to why I think this is a really great fragrance, and also why I've used so much of it. If you look at my bottle, I'm really low. I've used this a ton. This was kind of one of my mainstays back when I didn't have a full-on collection, which is why I've used so much of this one. I would call this fragrance a semi-gourmand. It's not a full-on gourmand, but it does give me kind of an apple pie vibe, which is why I would say it's a semi-gourmand. But because of the price tag and because it is at least a semi-gourmand, I think this is a great entry-level gourmand. And what gourmand means is just a fragrance that smells like something you would want to eat. So, for example, Killian Black Phantom is a really famous gourmand fragrance. That's obviously very expensive, and not everybody is into things that smell like food, smell like desserts or whatever. So I think this is a good one to try it and try wearing it and see if that genre of fragrances is something you would be interested in. I think this is a good starter gourmand fragrance. I would say that partially because of that freshness present with the apple, that this is a clean and refined fragrance, but it's kind of in a category of its own. There's not really a genre that I want to put it in directly. Like, it's not like reviewing something like a blue fragrance where I can say this is so-and-so genre and you can kind of know what it will smell like. This is kind of doing its own thing. I think semi-gourmand is about the best I can come up with for an actual genre. That being said, it's not a true gourmand. It is that very clean, fresh, mass appealing thing going on with it. It's not a super foodie gourmand. Which is why it's kind of in a hybrid genre. And this one in particular, Boss Bottled Intense Eau de Parfum, is by far the best performer in the Boss Bottled line. The original, which came out in 1998, was not a great performer, kind of like the original Acquadigio in 96. That's kind of par for the course with that era and any kind of fresh or semi-fresh fragrance. They just didn't perform that well. Thankfully, now adjustments to the composition, the actual ingredients in it, and just adjustments to formulation, this is actually a stronger formulation, have made it actually perform well even against more modern fragrances. And I think it makes it a decent option. So what does it smell like? What kind of notes do I get from this? Well, off the top, I get that semi-fresh but semi-sweet apple. And right underneath that, kind of a top note as well, is this cinnamon note. But it's not overly spicy, it's sweetened, and it's rounded. It's not an overly aggressive spice, and it's really toned down by that apple. And underneath that is just some kind of, I wouldn't even know what exactly, but just some kind of generic modern woods and a good bit of vanilla. But again, it's not overly sweet, it's a light vanilla, almost like an airy vanilla. So all these notes together do give me that kind of apple pie vibe, which, you know, apple, cinnamon, and vanilla, I mean, of course it does, right? But it's fresh enough from that apple, and that apple stays a long time. This is a very linear fragrance. That apple stays pretty much the whole life of the thing, that it never really isn't fresh. It's still fresh the whole way, even though it's also sweet. And it's never overly synthetic. Maybe natural is not the right word, but it's never overly synthetic. It never comes across as off-putting in any way from it's smelling like for example, Paco Rabanne's Invictus can be off-putting to some people because it is considered overly synthetic. This one does not have that problem at all, even though it is somewhat sweet. It's a more natural sweetness, and that vanilla especially is like a more natural vanilla. It's not amped up. It's an honest sweetness. As far as performance on this, I get moderate projection and moderate sillage. Nothing crazy, but it is present. One thing about it though is it is light and subtle in that projection, so even though it's there, it's not strongly present, but it is present. If you, for example, ask the person next to you, hey, do you smell that? They'll say yes, but they probably won't have noticed it beforehand because it is a pretty light fragrance in the air. Even though it doesn't really feel like it when you wear it, it feels like it's pretty present when you wear it yourself. But just from feedback I've gotten from people, it seems like it's actually pretty light. Even though it is there, it's pretty light and it's pretty easily missed. And longevity on this, I would say, is pretty good. I get 7 to 9 hours, which is nothing crazy, but it's definitely good enough. And it projects for about the first 2 hours of that longevity. After that, it dials back, and about 4 hours in, it's just a skin scent. But it is a pleasant skin scent, and even though vanilla is a base note, a lot of times when that's the case, that skin scent time is really just the vanilla. In this case, it's actually not. You pretty much get the full fragrance even in that skin scent, which is cool. So longevity for me is pretty good. So who is this for? Well, this is for someone who wants the king of mass appealing fall time fragrances. This is super heavy into that mass appeal. Definitely would never offend anyone, but that apple pie, it comes across in such a great way that, man, it just makes me feel like the fall time. And it's just so good for that. So I would say that this is all season, all occasion, even though it does lean towards the fall time, not because it doesn't work in the summer, it does, absolutely, and not because it can't work in the winter, because it does, absolutely. It's just because that cinnamon apple pie vibe makes you feel like the fall time. It reminds you of Thanksgiving, it reminds you of that time of the year. So that's why it's considered kind of the king of designer fall fragrances. And the cool thing about it is that it comes across really clean, and that makes it actually extremely office safe, which is not something you get with gourmands. So cool in my book. So would I recommend this? Well, yes. And one of the biggest reasons for that is because it's cheap and because it's interesting. And it's not just a generic cheap fragrance, this is a cool cheap fragrance. But the biggest detracting factor for me is that it's so safe that it can go unnoticed, and it usually does go unnoticed. I wore this in an office setting at one of my previous jobs very heavily for over a year and never got a single compliment for it. I wasn't wearing it for compliments, I was wearing it for me, which is how I recommend you wear this fragrance, is just if you want those apple pie vibes, wear it for you. But that projection is so light that you're really not gonna get noticed. And during that same time, other things in my rotation were getting me compliments from random people at my work, like Versace Dylan Blue and Prada L'Homme. Those were getting me some compliments. This one, never, not noticed a single time. So if you wear it for you, not for anybody else, which is kind of how you should live your life anyway. But that being said, compliments are nice, and if you're going with something fresh and mass appealing, that might be why you're interested. So if you're going for this for compliments, it's not the one. It's not the one. But if you want an interesting semi-gourmand fragrance to dip your toes into that genre without spending a bunch of money or without getting something that's too edgy, it's a great option, which is why for me, it gets an 8 out of 10. And if that projection were just a little bit more punchy, or it was just a little bit more noticeable, it would be higher. But where it is, it gets an 8 out of 10, and it is a recommendation from me. I do think you should pick this up. I will say when I was wearing this, I was wearing about 4 sprays, so maybe go higher and you'll get more attention. But for me, that was plenty because, like I said, wearing it for me. But anyways, that'll wrap this video up for me. You guys have a great day.